Hello, and this is the final video in this small series in which I discuss my political activism record. And it is in this video that I will discuss how I arrived at Marxism. But yeah, in 2016, I became an online volunteer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation electoral campaign again. And I believe that we're running Gloria La Riva. And, you know, also on the side, I was keeping an eye on the campaign of Jill Stein. She was running for the Green Party. And the reason Jill Stein caught my eye is because she staged a protest uh, when they had the presidential debates. She was barred from them, so she staged a protest outside the presidential debates that turned into like a very big mass rally against the dictatorship of the two-party system. So I thought that was very significant and important, and it was the beginning of the revolt against. It was like Jill Stein was part of the revolt against centrist totalitarianism that began in 2015. I mean, and obviously, the Donald Trump campaign was a revolt against centrism in the Republican Party. Trump denounced centrist Republicans as rhinos. So the Trump campaign was an insurgency against centrism in the Republican Party, and Jill Stein was an example of an insurgency from the independent left against centrist totalitarianism. And then what happened in the Democrat Party is that the Democrat Party did a very clever play here because they trotted out Bernie Sanders. See, they knew what was going on, that people were revolting against centrism in 2016, so they trotted out Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is a very, very sophisticated bait and switch operation, because Bernie Sanders was deliberately inserted into the conversation to supplant the space once occupied by Ralph Nader. See, so the purpose of Bernie Sanders was twofold: to undermine the campaign of Jill Stein and to supplant Ralph Nader. So he would tell people what they wanted to hear, right? Universal health care and workers, whatever, and we're going to cancel student debt and blah, blah, blah. Bernie Sanders was very seductive. He seduced you, right? He seduces. He's seductive with his little fake pseudo-socialist speech. And very, very, in the convention, Democrat convention in 2016, of course, he endorsed Hillary Clinton. He gave all this, he talked the talk about, whatever, the billionaire class. He ended up endorsing an agent of the billionaire class, which totally discredited him, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I knew he was a fraud from the get-go, because he kept saying that he was not going to split the vote. He's not going to split the vote. And that proves right there that he was a fraud. I knew it right away. I could see what they were trying to do. He was trying to sound like Ralph Nader, to undermine Jill Stein, and then endorse the centrist to get people to vote for the centrist. So endorse Hillary, right? And then the Hillary Clinton campaign made the huge mistake of that, making that audio clip or whatever of Donald Trump saying that he grabbed women by their private parts, and actually that made Trump more popular because people were sick and tired of liberal identity politics. So, which liberal identity politics are totally hypocritical, because they're pointillistic and tepid. It's not real liberation. Okay, so basically that Access Hollywood scandal helped Trump, made him more popular, not less popular. So it totally backfired on Hillary Clinton, and it ruined all the effort of Bernie Sanders to fool the left-minded public into supporting Hillary. So and I feel, and it was also a monumental defeat for Me Too, the Me Too movement. I understand where the Me Too movement is coming from, and I respect them. I respect the Me Too movement. I respect the fact that they want to take down rapists. And I understand that it is correct. I mean, women are not believed. Women are never believed. You know, you know, the issue of evidence is thrown in the faces of women. Whatever. But you know, I understand that. It is frustrating to be a woman who was sexually molested by some prominent man, and then that because the man is prominent, nobody believes you that he, you know, whatever. I understand. I understand. However, the problem with Me Too, though, is that the tactics of Me Too are wrong-headed, because Me Too is premised upon denial of presumption of innocence and rules of evidence, and you cannot do that. If you throw out rules of evidence and presumption of innocence, then you are creating the precondition for the emergence of a seriously powerful police state. That is what the government wants to do. They want to get rid of presumption of innocence. They want to get rid of due process. They want to get rid of the necessity to show proof so that they can do whatever they want. If you get rid of presumption of innocence and rules of evidence, then you end up with a police state, dictatorship. No different than, you know, the Gestapo or the Stasi. That's where you're going to end up with if you get rid of presumption of innocence and rules of evidence. You cannot do that. And that is the problem with Me Too. See? The intention of Me Too is correct, because women are not believed. Women are not believed. You know, but there needs to be some other way to address that problem other than abolishing due process and civil rights. I mean, presumption of innocence is a fundamental civil right that protects everyone. If you take that down, it will come. Okay, let's say that Me Too abolished. Let's say that Me Too manages to get, you know, presumption of innocence abolished and rules of evidence. What will happen then? Okay, down the line, then the FBI can say the radical feminists are terrorists. I don't need evidence because I don't need evidence. All I need to say is that they're terrorists because I'm the police. They're terrorists. So they'll come and crack down on the radical feminists. See what I'm saying? So the radical feminists who support Me Too could end up being targeted by the FBI down the line if, you know, okay, by advocating the abolition of due process and rules of evidence and presumption of innocence. The radical feminists who support Me Too are making a mistake in that they're making themselves vulnerable down the line to attack from the state, right? So, and again, I understand where women are coming from, okay? I understand it is frustrating to not be believed, especially if the person who raped you is somebody famous. I understand that. But, you know, some other way needs to be found to address this issue. And that is what happened with Hillary Clinton in 2016 when she made viral this thing about grabbing them by the pussy, as or whatever. I forgive the locker room expression. But that backfired on Hillary Clinton. Because by the time in 2016 already there was a backlash against Me Too, because Me Too was threatening presumption of innocence and rules of evidence. It was turning into a witch hunt. It was turning into the Salem witch hunt. And that's the problem, see? So there needs to be a revival of Me Too that looks at another way of taking down rapists, that does not take down presumption of innocence. That, okay, a way to take down rapists that does not remove civil rights that protect everyone. Okay, that's what I mean. Okay, but, you know, I understand where Me Too is coming from. I understand where they're coming from. If I was a woman who was raped, I would be very angry if the rapist kept going, living his life as if nothing happened just because he's famous or rich or whatever. I understand, you know. I understand. I would also be very angry, you know, and yeah. So I understand how women feel who have been raped. And they have every right to feel angry. But, yeah, they just need to come up with a new tactic. But anyhow. Anyways, I was keeping an eye on Jill Stein. I thought Jill Stein was great. She was the replacement for Ralph Nader. Was Jill Stein. But Bernie Sanders, the Democrats made a play on her. And they trotted out Bernie Sanders, see? And now Bernie Sanders has been discredited. Bernie Sanders is discredited. In 2020, he did it again. You know, he talked the talk, but then he ended up endorsing the centrist Biden. So again, Bernie Sanders is discredited. Everybody knows he's now regarded as a discredited, controlled opposition. You know, he's out. Bernie is out. And recently he was supporting Biden endorsed the genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza, and Bernie came out supporting Biden or whatever. And then after the massive movement against the genocide in Gaza took off, then Bernie became scared, and all of a sudden he tried to backpedal that he was not really whatever, but it was too late. He's already discredited. So Bernie Sanders is discredited, is washed up, is old news. Yeah. In 2024, I'm an online volunteer again for Party for Socialism and Liberation, Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. So yeah, but I'll come to that in a minute. Anyways, let's see. Between September 2019 and October 2020, I was not involved in politics or any type of activism at all because I was a Jehovah's Witness. So, and in Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to be politically neutral, and you're forbidden from joining any type of activist cause. So, for 1 year, I was dedicated to Jehovah's Witnesses, but then in October 2020, I woke up. And between October 2020 and November 2021, for that year, I was part of the PIMO underground inside Jehovah's Witnesses. And PIMO stands for physically in, mentally out. People who are staying inside Jehovah's Witnesses only because they fear the consequences of disfellowshipping, such as shunning, and also the loss of their economic status. So I was part of that underground community of, yeah. And I used to keep an eye. I began to follow the work of Lloyd Evans and the John Cedars channel. And Lloyd Evans is a Jehovah's Witness dissident. He's a very prominent ex-Jehovah's Witness activist and dissident. So I began to follow the work on his channel. And he convinced me that Jehovah's Witnesses were, it was indefensible to continue to be a Jehovah's Witness. Especially a video that he published called The Martyrdom of Gerald Scepter. Jehovah's Witnesses forbid blood transfusions. And there was this young boy in the United States, Gerald Scepter, who was refused. His parents, he wasn't, went to the hospital, and the doctor needed to perform a blood transfusion. The parents refused. The boy died. It's a short story of it. After watching that video, I became convinced that the Jehovah's Witnesses were not for me, and that I needed to leave this organization. Because I'm not going to continue to, in the field service, I was promoting them, and I'm not going to continue doing this. I cannot do it. My conscience does not allow me to continue with this. Given the impact of this fellowshipping, given the impact of the blood teaching, I cannot condone this organization anymore. And yeah, so it took me a year to figure out a strategy to get out. And while I was doing so, I tried to do what I could online. Posting anonymous comments on various, videos that Lloyd Evans would publish in the comment section. I would go in and like support whatever Lloyd Evans was trying to, say or whatever. Encourage Lloyd Evans is the best I think I could do. And I was anonymous. I set up like a separate Gmail account that was not connected to my real Gmail account or whatever, which I had to delete later. But yeah. It's a complicated thing that I had to do to remain anonymous online. I made my own ex-Jehovah's Witness content beginning in September and October of 2021, 2 months before I left. Yeah, so I left it online. It's still up there. There'll be a link in the description to it. So yeah, I delved in ex-Jehovah's Witness activism briefly, and Lloyd Evans is a true dissident. Many of the techniques that he uses in his ex-Jehovah's Witness channel are techniques that apply to any type of dissident activity. So if you want to learn dissidents in YouTube and in the YouTube environment, or in the whatever social media platform environment, you want to go to Lloyd Evans' channel, and you want to go to Mid-Western Marx in YouTube. So that's how you learn to be a dissident in the 21st century. Eddie from Mid-Western Marx and Lloyd Evans from the John Cedars channel. Those two are the ones to look at. And I mean by dissident, of course, and I've studied dissidents. I've studied several dissidents in 2021 and 22, 23. These years, I've been really focused on studying dissidents. Um, I'm currently reading a book called On Guantanamo by David Hicks. My Guantanamo Journey, I think it's called. I will put link in the description to it. David Hicks, he explains his experience at the Guantanamo concentration camp. He endured 5 years of torture and abuse there. I've also read, of course, The Abridged. I've read Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I've read, The Revolution Betrayed by Leon Trotsky. I've also read, some of the writings of Václav Havel. And I'm also familiar with other Western dissidents such as Julian Assange, Mumia Abu Jamal, Leonard Peltier. That young woman, I think her name is Reality Winner. And the kid that went to Russia, asked for asylum in Russia. What is his name? Edward Snowden. And Chelsea Manning, of course. Chelsea Manning. So yeah, I mean, I'm very well versed with dissidents and dissidents. So, and it's actually Lloyd Evans who inspired me to start looking up dissidents. Yeah, the story of dissidents. And and Eddie from Mid-Western Marx is a young kid, but he's really good too with being a dissident, a Marxist-Leninist dissident on social media. He's very good. His dissident, his and his friends do a lot of good work. He's all over the place. Eddie is all over the place. He's on in YouTube, Rumble, Twitch TV, TikTok, Instagram. He got banned from TikTok, but he's on Instagram, so he's really good. He's really young. He's really young. I don't think he's not out of his 20s yet. He's really, really energetic and does a lot of really, really good work. Eddie from Mid-Western Marx Institute. So, Eddie from Mid-Western Marx Institute and Lloyd Evans are my role models for online activism now. So in the era of modern social media, I mean, when I started doing online activism, it was before the modern era of social media. In my time, it was like Yahoo groups, MySpace, indie media, chat rooms, sponsored by organizations, etc. It wasn't really social media was very, very primitive. Before Facebook, before Instagram, before TikTok, and before Twitter, so I've had to upgrade my approach in the modern social media environment, this side of Facebook, and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I've had to learn Rumble, etc. I've had to learn all these platforms, to I don't know, redefine my activity and the role models that I looked at for modern social media activism are, again, Eddie from Mid-Western Marx and Lloyd Evans from the John Cedars channel. But yeah, okay, that's right. Right, so I was in the PIMO underground. PIMO means physically and mentally out. Underground is at Jehovah's Witnesses in 2021. Anyways, between November 2020 and March 2022, I was a member of the International Marxist Tendency. And I joined the International Marxist Tendency on a clandestine basis while I was PIMO. While I was in the PIMO underground, I secretly joined the International Marxist Tendency. And I did the same thing that I did when I was in Amsterdam, when I was a boy in Amsterdam. I was going to the Radical Liberal Business School and working at the .com incubator, and then I was moonlighting, and at night, I had like a day life and a night life, right? During the day, I was the figurative. During the figurative day, I was at the Radical Neoliberal Business School, and at the .com incubator, and then in the figurative night, I was organizing street raves with Reclaim the Streets. So I did the same thing, right? And my involvement with Reclaim the Streets was semi-clandestine and covered up by a smoke screen of entertainment, right? But it was actually political. It was anarchist politics. But anyways, I did the same thing now in my old age. In 2020, how old was I in 2020? 2020 to 2022. I'm 46, 7, 8, 6, 7. I'm 49 now. I'm going to be 49 in March, so I was 46, 7 those years. I'm an old man, and I went back to my model of Amsterdam when I was a boy. I became a boy again. The Jehovah's Witnesses drove me to that. I had to become a boy again, and I had to like join the Marxists on a clandestine basis while pretending to be a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, so I was made a candidate member in February of 2021 and a full member in June 2021. And I had to leave in March 2022 because I had to focus on survival issues. But I wrote 4 articles for Revolution News, which is Marxist.se. So I'm very thankful to the International Marxist Tendency for that. And in the International Marxist Tendency, I learned how Marxism works. Marxism is the self-emancipation of the working class. Marxism is a method of analysis that allows you to look at the existing political economy on a scientific basis, and from that you derive a political program that then you can use as guide for the working class to transition from capitalism to communism through socialism. And Marxism, workers' emancipation is premised upon the material basis of workers' control of the means of production, and the components of a political economy are, social organization of labor, technical organization of production, and the property forms and collectivized property forms. Collectivized property forms means social ownership. Social ownership means workers' control of the means of production. And and of course I learned about historical materialism. Historical materialism, history is but the evolution from primitive communism to the communism of the future, which has a technological and industrial basis. In between the primitive communism and the communism of the future, the stages of means of production are slavery, feudalism, capitalism, and socialism. And there are 2 additional heretical modes of production, which are Asiatic mode of production and state capitalism. But Asiatic mode of production and state capitalism are not recognized by all Marxists. Many Marxists argue that what people are referring to when they say Asiatic mode of production is really Chinese feudalism or Byzantine feudalism, right? And as far as state capitalism, 90% of Marxists do not accept that because they say that it's a capitulation to right-wing propaganda. So, anyways, it doesn't matter. But I learned Marxism. I learned how Marxism works. I learned about how dialectical materialism works. Everything is ceasing to be and becoming at all times. There is a moment when the cat is on the mat and when the cat is off the mat. And there is a moment in which the cat is in transition between the mat and the floor. So, there is no such thing as a moment. Everything is in flux, etc. And change is dialectical and contradictory and whatever. And you have the Marxist adaptation of the Hegelian dialectics to political economy and history, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So, etc., etc. What drives progress is the class struggle, the conflict between the classes. What drives forward the class struggle? What drives history forward is the class struggle that eventually culminates in the eventual achievement of a communism premised upon a developed industrial and technological base. And that would be the conflict between slaves and slave masters, the conflict between feudal lords and serfs, the conflict between workers and capitalists. And so conflict drives history forward. Thesis versus antithesis, locked in struggle until one or the other wins. Inevitably, communism is the victory of communism is inevitable, right? According to Marxism, the victory of communism is inevitable because it is the inexorable trajectory of history, progress. So even if there is retreats, progress will resume again at some other point. All retreats are temporary. So the fall of the Berlin Wall, temporary retreat. How long did it? Okay, a temporary retreat that set back the class struggle for 30 years. The class struggle is back now, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell the Marxism that I learned with the International Marxist Tendency. And I also learned other things: how to write an article for a revolutionary newspaper, how to intervene in a meeting, how are meetings organized, how to organize a protest, how to organize a petition, how to organize like that. You learn all those things. So for me, the International Marxist Tendency was a school where I learned Marxist activism. So yeah, and so yeah, it was like going to the International Marxist Tendency was like being back in that business school in Amsterdam, right? Yeah, it was like the antithesis of the business school I went to in Amsterdam. So yeah, so it was interesting. So yeah, it was full circle. I became a boy again, and I ended up yeah, it was like interesting. The antithesis of what I did when in 2000, I ended up doing in 2021 and 22. But let's see. Anyways, fast forward. March to the present, I am a member of I'm organized with Lesbian Comunistica Party, and I was a candidate member between March 2022 and April 2023. I became a full member in April 2023, and I wrote 6 articles for Richtpunkt News, which is the Swedish Marxist-Leninist publication of Lesbian Comunistica Party. And in August of 2022, I worked as a physical election campaign volunteer, a physical and social media campaign volunteer for 1 week with Rättvisa Partiet Socialisterna in Haninge, Stockholm, and for 3 weeks with Sveriges Kommunistiska Parti in Hammarö, Torsby, and Säffle, Värmland. So I split myself. I donated 1 week to Rättvisa Partiet Socialisterna in Haninge, and I donated 3 weeks to Sveriges Kommunistiska Parti in Värmland, Hammarö, Torsby, and Säffle. So yeah, that's what I did in 2022. I intervened in the Swedish election physically and online. Of course, I intervene on social media using the techniques that I learned from watching the example of Eddie at the Mid-Western Marx Institute and Lloyd Evans on the John Cedars channels on YouTube, right? So I applied what I learned from watching Eddie and Lloyd in 2022, in August 2022, when I was doing online campaigning with my phone, using a smartphone with for Rättvisa Partiet Socialisterna and Sveriges Kommunistiska Parti. Okay, so yeah, so I upgraded my skills or whatever. Yeah. Let's see. Finally, October 7th to December 13th, 2023. I got involved with Network for Palestine Värmland, and I was active in the Freedom for Palestine anti-war protest movement against the Israeli war on Gaza. And and I participated in several demonstrations in the Karlstad area, and I gave one speech at Soltorget denouncing NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, support for the Israeli genocide in Gaza. And and I helped carry the banderol. I was the banderol gube, carrying the banderol during the demonstrations. I took some footage of the demonstrations and stuff, and I passed them on social media. I tried to, like, because the Network for Palestine Värmland is running a campaign on social media on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. So I made sure I added myself to that effort, passing on their things and I made my own video footage, but I also pass on their stuff in order to amplify their message as much as possible. So yeah, I was active in both in the streets and in social media, in the Freedom for Palestine anti-war protest movement against the Israeli war on Gaza between October 7th and December 13th, 2023. Then I left Sweden and I came to Norway. So. And here in Norway, I haven't been involved in anything. Not really. I'm on my way out. I'm on my way out of Europe very, very soon. So I'm not really. I can't really get involved with anything. I mean, while I am here in Norway, I've had some contact with NKP, the Norska Kommunistiska Parti, and I've had some discussions with them about Venezuela, about why I'm trying to explain to them why the Venezuelan Communist Party broke with Maduro, and then I've interacted with them about their effort for Palestine in Norway. It's pretty good. They've had some pretty interesting results, demonstrations and stuff. So not as big as Sweden, but modest enough that they're significant. Apparently, there was a big demonstration in front of the Norwegian foreign ministry, so that was good. Significant demonstration in Oslo, so that's good. Um, yeah, and right now in 2024, though, I am involved with as an online volunteer with the Vote Party for Socialism and Liberation 2024 effort. And Party for Socialism and Liberation is running Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia for Vice President of the United States. And I am my angle is that if you marched for Palestine in 2023 and 2024, if you were waving the Palestinian flag, chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. If you were chanting Free Palestine, if you were chanting ceasefire now, then Joe Biden is not the candidate for you. The candidate for you is Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. Okay? Because Joe Biden endorses and supports wholeheartedly the genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. Okay? So if you are a consistent supporter of Palestine, you cannot vote for Joe Biden. So in my own effort to support and a vote for Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia, I am arguing that a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for genocide. Boycott Joe Biden, boycott the Democrat Party, because the Democrat Party endorses and supports the genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. So I am advocating that people boycott the Democrat Party. If you march for Palestine in the United States and you can vote in the American election, boycott the Democrat Party. Do not vote for the Democrat Party in any ballot. Not just presidential, but down ballot too. Do not vote for them for a state, local, nothing. Do not ignore the Democrat Party. If Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia are not on the ballot, write them in and then leave it at that. Don't vote. Ignore the Democrat Party. Just don't vote for them. Boycott them. So yeah, because they need to pay a political price for having endorsed the genocide against the Palestinians. They cannot get away with it. They're gonna have to pay a price. So each one of you who marched for Palestine has to ensure that Joe Biden and the Democrat Party pay a political price for having endorsed the genocide in Gaza. Every single civilian that was murdered by the IDF, their blood demands that you boycott Joe Biden and the Democrats in 2024. Okay? So that's my argument, my pitch for Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia. Vote PSL 2024. Vote Socialist in 2024. And that concludes this series about my activism record. Thank you.